Recording. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Silva, for joining, for accepting our invite. For those of you who don't know Silva, Silva has about 20 years of experience in human resources as a leader, specifically focused on learning and leadership development. He spent 15 years with General Electric, where he was leading their corporate university globally, offering about 200 plus programs across 50 countries. In his in the most recent role, he was working on an initiative which is titled the New Work Model. This is a board. This is a group-wide initiative by the board, where he aimed to profoundly change the way people work and collaborate. Uh, Having lived in 6 countries and having worked in different countries, he's currently also a senior advisor at the Columbia Business School in New York. He has keen interest in understanding how organizations, how leaders, and the culture need to be reinvented so that they can all meet the challenges of tomorrow. He's written many articles, including some that get published in McKinsey Quarterly Insights. Welcome, Silva. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you, Aditya. Thanks for the invitation. It seems you have a group of friends here. Everybody knows everybody and greets everybody. That's nice.
Thank you. And they've been all of great support to me over the last few weeks in this journey. So, so as we get started, during our conversation, you were talking about the gap between intention and action when we work with clients, when you're coaching them. So I have about a couple of questions around that. So one is, can you please elaborate more on that one? And the second is, as a follow-up of that, what could be the causes of that intention and action, the inertia that typically is there, that we usually find? And finally, as a coach, how can we work with the client in helping them fix it?
Wow, thank you, Aditya. Those are great questions. Yeah, first, I love doing coaching, and I'm sure if you are here around today, you must enjoy the art of coaching as well. I love it because you never know where it takes you. You can learn all the skills and method and practice, and you bring your intuition and your toolkit, but you never know where the coachee wants to take you, which make it really, really exciting. And so it's true, Aditya, that one of the things I like to do in coaching is to help my coachee find the gap they have between what they intend to do and what they end up doing. Because often there is a lot of richness to be discussed here around what's in your way, as you said. Is that around the situation? Is that around the person in front of you? Is that around your belief? Is that around your value? Is that around the unwritten rules and the culture in the organization you are right now that's holding you from being able to implement the behavior that you wanted to implement or the one you believe you are implemented. So that's really something I like doing. I think a coach is somebody that hold the mirror and help people to look at what they do, because in the action every day, you don't really have time to reflect. So our job is to slow it down. And that's super important, specifically when you coach people during the day and they are in the office, they come between two calls and it's very hectic and they are in high speed mode. And if you say, okay, now we calm down, now we take a step back, now we reflect, that's already a lot of value you bring to them. So slow it down, help them look at what they do and help them compare what they do versus what they intend to do. And here you have a wonderful space that you can discuss around, okay, so what's in the way of you doing what you intend to do? Yeah, so maybe I stop there because we can go now in different direction in good coaching way. We can go that way or that way, but in essence, that's what I enjoy doing.
Great, great. And sometimes as a coach, we get fixated with a particular way of helping the client break this inertia and impasse. What is it that you do to kind of work through it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Aditya. So maybe let me give you two answers to that. So the first one is, let's take an example. We make it a bit more concrete here. So imagine, and it's not in the world of business, but imagine some of you enjoy playing music. So you have somebody who plays the piano and say, look, I'm rehearsing a lot, but somehow I'm not able to play it with as much emotion, or it's not as expressive as I would like it to be. So now you can work with that client on three different levels. The first one is what unfortunately we tend to do most often in organization, is the skill level. That's the first level. Okay, so you are not playing as expressive as you would like. So what can you do? Well, you can, for example, improve your finger technique. And you can do much more exercise with your finger. You are going to be much more agile, and that's going to be able to bring more expression out. That's the skill level. That's typically what we do in company. You have a skill gap, we fix it with an intervention, and you build new skills. Now there is the second level where you go deeper, where you take a step back and you reflect what's going on, what's missing that you are not playing as expressively as you would like. And maybe you realize, well, I'm a bit nervous when I'm playing in front of people. There is something inside me. I'm so good when I am home, but when I am in the concert hall or playing in front of the family or friend, I'm getting nervous. And so then you start looking at strategy to deal with that. One of them could be that you just acknowledge that you are nervous and you tell everybody has a good laugh, and then you go ahead and you feel already more relaxed. And then there is the third level, which is much, much deeper, which is more about your experience, what you have been through. And maybe you realize, well, when I was a child playing home, showing emotion was not something that was valued in my family. And as such, I have learned somewhere not to show and express those emotions. And so as a coach, I think you first have to reflect, which level down do you want to go? The skills level might help you to fix things that are missing. The second level, which is more about belief and assumption, that's typically a nice coaching level where you can go by doing reflection. The third level is much harder. To be honest, often it's close to more therapy or psychology or whatever. I'm not sure I would go there as a coach, certainly not in a business situation. But level 1 or 2, and typically level 2 is a wonderful space you can go. Now, if you talk about technique, and that's the second answer I want to give you on that, what technique precisely, what tools do you want to use? And maybe it's a tool you know. One of my favorite author, and you might know of him, is Chris Argyris. Chris Argyris was a professor at the Harvard Business School. If you haven't read Chris, go ahead, buy a book and read Chris. Now, it's super hard, so don't do that like you're reading in summer or Sunday with a drink. It's really focus reading, and that's why Chris is not so famous, because he was working with nobody to make it accessible to people. So it's not like Christensen, who built then a consulting practice and made all this strategy tool available to everybody. Chris Argyris remained in his office having his thought and wonderful deep thought, but you really have to read the sentence sometime 2 or 3 times. But he developed a lot of tools as well you can use, working on his theory around behavior and mental model people have. And one of them, very practical, which I love to use, maybe you know it, is called the left-hand column. And so as the name goes, you take a piece of paper and you have on the left side, the left-hand column. So you do a line in the middle, the left-hand column, and the right-hand column. Sorry, that's on the other side. And what you do with your coachee is you ask your coachee to remember a discussion that person had where they didn't achieve their goal. So for some reason, you had a conflict, they were trying to influence something, convince something didn't go the way they intended it to go. And on the right-hand side, you write the discussion. So I said X, he answered Y. I said Y, he answered Z, etc. So you try to recall. Obviously, you can't do that in huge detail, but good enough to have a sense for how the discussion unfolded. And then on the left-hand side, you write what was going on in your mind at the time you said X, or at the time the person answered Y. So you see on the right-hand side what can be heard, on the left-hand side what was going on in your mind. Because as you know, a conversation is a set of choice you make. What I'm going to respond? Am I listening? What's going on in my head? What do I share that I'm thinking about? So you are all thinking about something now. When do you decide to share it or not share it? And it's wonderful that to look at the discussion, look what was going in the head of the person, and then challenge the person around choices they made to share that or not share that and why you did so. And that's a nice way to access their mental model. Very simple exercise.
That's powerful. That's very powerful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, any questions from the audience?
So, Sylvain, this is CH here. I was curious. I heard sometimes many years ago from you, but I'm once again curious to hear. Could you share an example of a talent whom you were coaching and then was not responding to coaching, and you had to challenge or confront the talent and then get them to acknowledge and then move forward?
So not responding to coaching, CH, in the sense not being open to it, for example?
Yeah, sometimes probably they say they will do it, but they are getting stuck somewhere and they're not doing it. Probably they are not even realizing why they are not doing it. They keep committing, they are sincere.
That's a wonderful one, CH. Thanks for asking. That can be very frustrating. So how do you help somebody when everything you've tried is not really working? And typically what I do, CH, I think in the situation, you have really three components. You have the coach, you have the coachee, and you have the, let's say, the environment. And the environment both is the place and the time. And so I'm trying to change one of those three elements. And so let's start with the environment. So if I'm not reaching the person, I'm trying to either stop it there and call it out. Again, that's, remember the left-hand column, right-hand column. I'm sensing we are going nowhere here. I make the choice to share what I'm experiencing right now. Look, I think we are not reaching anything with our conversation, or I feel maybe it's getting too emotional, or you see your coachee being still in a defensive position, still in denial. I mean, you sense a lot of things you are not breaking through. So one way is to say, okay, we stop there and we meet again tomorrow, we meet again in a week, because the time we've chosen to do the coaching is not appropriate for you to be receptive to it. So that might be a time question. Often the time helps, specifically if you start addressing something that's very personal and sensitive. People at time need time just to digest it, maybe to hear it from somebody else, and they go back home and share it with their wife and their partner, and they see, yeah, that's right. And so there is the time component. There is the location component, where specifically in business setting, CH, as you mentioned, sometimes there is the, specifically if you're a leader who coaches, there is the boss-employee relationship. Sometimes you're sitting around the table or you are behind your desk, and the person is used to be seeing their boss and not a coach, and they struggle with the discussion. What I do there, I take them with me and we go outside and we go for a walk. And I have had some of the best coaching discussion walking with somebody, because you are shoulder to shoulder, you are not face to face. And as neuroscientists say, when your body moves, your brain grooves. So it's really putting your head in action and your mind in action. And I had wonderful coaching discussion simply by walking outside. And again, specifically when I coach leaders, they are in the hectic of their day-to-day, they are in the office, take them outside, it does wonder. So that's around the environment. That's one piece I might change. About me first, and I should think about me as a coachee, maybe there is something I'm doing that's not working for that person. So I see two options here. Either I really need to change my tools and technique, either be more direct, be more reflective. I go back to my books and my 101 and try to take another tool and try that tool. So really challenging myself. Is there something I did that was not working well? Or I decide to remove myself. Maybe I'm not the right coach for that person, being the leader, or because of my style, and that's okay. And we need to agree that we are not going anywhere else, and then you find another coach. And then there is the coachee, which is the hardest, CH, to your point. If somebody doesn't go into execution, so remember the coaching discussion has to lead to result. Otherwise, it's a nice chit chat, but we need to have something coming out of it. If you think about the GROW model, which I'm sure everybody knows, the W is about the way forward, it's about the willingness to execute. So if you don't go there, then it was just a nice discussion. So is there something we can change in terms of your next step that was not working for you? Can we make it more simple? Can we make it remove any barriers that you have? So that's all the kind of things I would look into, CH.
I think we lost him, but we've heard the answer.
And I see CH, yeah, I
Yeah,
see him.
he's just joined back, I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, I loved the body moves, brain grooves. That was lovely. While you could choose to answer later, but a follow-up piece was the moment they open up, a lot of times there is a drama that goes on. People just keep telling about how the whole world is terrible, how others are not helpful. So how do you confront them and get them to reality that it's about them and it's not about others? And
Yeah.
it helps if you could share an example of somebody you did that with and what drama they were going through and how did you help them realize?
Yeah, it's a good point, CH. Let me think briefly of an example. I joined a company once where I was coaching tons of people in a context where feedback was not part of their culture. So I found a company where for a long time it was about harmony. You would just agree with each other. Everybody would end up the year being evaluated roughly the same way. If you had some variable compensation, people were paid roughly the same 100%. It was maybe from 95 to 105 kind of variation. So this kind of company you might know of. And here you go and you have to help people in terms of their development and at time fixed things that are holding them back. And I remember having discussion with many people where as soon as we would start talking about them, it would become very emotional, to your point. I would have sometimes people in tears. I would have some people being in denial. And I was wondering what's going on here, because I don't think I am a particularly heads-on coach. I tend to be a bit more reflective. I love listening. I don't think I am in your face. And I was thinking, what am I doing wrong here? And so I shared, without sharing the names of the people, obviously keeping the confidentiality that's critical in our job. I share my experience with somebody in the HR team, and that's where I found out about that part of the culture, and I could understand that. And so what I do here, CH, I think it's super important not to go away from the idea to focus on you. So it's not because you don't want to do it that I'm going to give up, because we are not going to change anything if we just look at the environment. But I looked at a lot of model. I mean, you certainly know, for example, the tool, the circle of control and the circle of concern, which is a famous one where you start brainstorming with the person. So you draw the two circles on the flip chart and you start positioning all the things they tell you. And you end up realizing that most of the things they are venting about, like you say, it's in their circle of concern. The other people, the company, the stress, the workload, and then you start saying, okay, so let's look at that. What can we put in the middle now? In case the middle is empty, your circle of control, so what you can start changing tomorrow, what is there? And so that is a tool sometimes that works. But again, the other thing that helped me a lot here was to leave time between two discussions and not force it. So if you have people that are already mature, very self-reflecting, you go super fast to resolution and action. If they are not, then I just need more time for them to emotionally connect with me and take the path down.
Thank you.
I quite like and quite resonate with you talking about giving them the time, which is so very important. Often we tend to see coaches who are trying to hurry into getting the results out, but sometimes it's so critical to give them the time to slow things down that you're talking about. Fantastic points, Silva.
Aditya, in fact, I believe more and more those days that slowing down is one of the best value you can bring them. I mean, you've seen with the pandemic, we've all moved digital, and people's agenda those days is from early to late, back-to-back call. They don't even have time for a bio break. It's really getting crazy. It's a high intensity. And when you say, let's slow down and let's reflect on what's going on. And I think as a coach, you bring tons of clarity to your coaching. By the way you think, you reflect, you bring them ton of clarity, and clarity comes from thinking through. It doesn't come from staying in the hectic of the action. So yes.
Great. Any other questions to Silva? Hello.
This side, I have a question on how to use the virtual media. Sometimes what happens, today we are all in Corona, where lockdown is there, we cannot have physical. So the exact emotions or the eye contact and everything, we cannot properly judge on a virtual platform. So have you had any tips to overcome this, or how to handle that?
And I'm sorry, I don't know who asked the question. I didn't see that on the screen here. Who was that?
That was Raghu.
That is Raghu. That is Raghu.
Raghu, thanks for the question. Yeah, it's a great question. So, and I don't think it's super new though, because I've done coaching on the phone for a long time. And I was reflecting recently that, so I'm doing coaching now mostly remotely, just starting to do face-to-face intervention again, but that's coming slowly. And I have to say that I haven't experienced limitation in coaching through digital. I have not experienced that. Am I looking forward to seeing people face to face again? Big time. I mean, I hope we will be able this fall, we'll see. But I'm really looking forward to it because, as you know, there are so many more cues you get. People say that you get only 30% of the communication through the words, and 70% is body and body language. And so imagine if you lose 70% digitally. Okay, you see a little bit my body language here, but that's because I'm standing. Some of you, I see only your face. I wouldn't see your body language. So let's say maybe you see a little bit the facial expression, but that's it. So let's say you have 50% of what's being communicating that's accessible remotely. So that's not easy. But somehow personally, and I don't know what's your experience, I found that specifically when you have only the voice, that you have a different level of listening. When we are face to face, you have so many cues going on around you, so many things you are watching. When I have only the voice through the phone, I listen so deeply into the voice, into the space between the words, into the emotion, the hesitation, the tone of the voice. There is so much you can find. So back to your question, Raghu, I didn't find it an obstacle to coach people remotely, not at all. I don't know what has been your experience or if there are certain things you've been struggling with, but you're on mute.
You're mute, Raghu.
So that's an obstacle when people are on mute, but I do it all the time as well.
Generally, what we observe is people don't open up. As you see, CH was saying they don't open up about themselves in physical. So in virtual, it adds more to the problem. And people do tend to, when you're coaching, they might be actually trying to listen to you, but actually doing something in the background which you cannot see. And the emotions which you observe may be actually not the correct emotions. Because they might be typing on some WhatsApp chat or else, and they may not pay the attention. Yes, the point taken. I think we have to learn and see how we can overcome all that. Yeah,
it's a fair point, Raghu. And to be honest, I've experienced it more in training session than in coaching. Because in training sessions, so let's imagine there are 12 of you here, maybe 2 are listening and 10 are doing shopping online. Let's imagine. I know it's not the case here, but sometimes people do it in training session. It's hard for me to know it. Now I can see some of you. I see Satya, I see King Shuk, I see Sima, I see you, Raghu, CH, Amit. So you seem roughly focused, I would say. The other I can't see, so I don't know. So that's a challenge. One-on-one, I don't experience that, Raghu. Now, one of the things I do for people to make them open up a little bit. So as you know, in coaching, you have essentially 3 elements you can use. You can ask questions, you can reflect, or you can advocate a point. So reflection, listening, and advocate are the 3 skills you have. They are a little bit like the gearbox in your car. While you are driving, you change your gearbox and you have to intentionally change the gears if you want to go faster, if you want to brake. So you make a choice. When you coach, all the time you make a choice. Am I reflecting now? Am I asking a question? Am I advocating? Super important, because how you decide that will completely influence the rest of the discussion. That's maybe the biggest decision you need to make. And when you think about reflection, Raghu, reflection and questioning. So you can reflect on a lot of things. You reflect on what people say to you. You reflect on what they don't say, but you sense the words, the tone of voice, the space in the words, the body language, eventually you can see. And then you reflect on all the intuition you have about what's going on. And then you decide what you share. In terms of question, and that's where I push them a little bit, Raghu, to your point, how do we make them open up? There are questions where you ask them about, so tell me more about the situation. What do you do in X situation? How do you react? So it's more descriptive question. But there is a level 2 where you do an evaluation. So Raghu, when you say X, I sense that you are not completely convinced about it. How is that? It's hard to answer those questions while you are typing on your keyboard. Number 1, yes, you can certainly describe something while doing something else. But when I start going deeper and I say, well, Raghu, it seems you intend to do X, but you do Y. Why are you not having the impact you want? Well, then you really have to activate your brain. And so that's how I try to hook people. And indeed, as you say, Raghu, there are some what we call micro behavior going on, people doing something else. And maybe you experience that. You ask them a question, you are fully listening. As soon as they ask you a question, you hear typing while you are answering. People do something else. They don't really care. Well, that's where I stop, I slow down. I say, I'm sorry, are you still there? Or I ask the question again, or I mention the sentence again, but you can sense a tone remotely. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I think technology will continue to improve in a way where coaching in 10 years with technology using augmented reality, using artificial intelligence will be fascinating.
Thank you very much. I think you answered it well.
Somebody
By
else?
the way, Aditya, maybe building on that, sorry, I'm having a thought here on artificial intelligence because I saw some tools recently, which I found interesting. And maybe you are familiar with the work of the professor from the Yale University on nudges. Maybe you've read about nudges, which nudge are so small things that you give to somebody to support them, to develop them. And there is a platform now that has been developed by the former CHRO of Google, who, by the way, CH was at GE before, Laszlo Bock. And the idea is to build a platform to scale nudge. And their vision is to say, well, coaching is great, but it's hard to coach 15,000 people in an organization. It's too expensive. So how do you do that? So they created a platform where first time you log in, you have to answer some question, a kind of personality test, so the machine gets to know about you. And then the machine sends you nudge. And the nudge will be a short message, could be an email, a text message, whatever. And then you read it briefly, and then the system all the time asks you if it was helpful. And based on that, we learn what can serve you better, and over time, really nudge you at the right time for the right topic. It's very early stages. I haven't experienced it myself. I can't tell you if it's worthwhile or not, but just the idea of doing that and how you add that to coaching. So it's not to replace, it's not technology to replace us as a coach. It's technology to augment what we do, augmented reality. Can you imagine between the session, if you can use a system that keeps sending nudges back to CH, your question, so that you increase the likelihood of things happening once you are not there. I mean, we could have an amazing impact.
True, very true. Satya, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a small one.
Please go ahead.
Lucky that my coach is also here. So thanks, CH, and I take his coaching sessions are kind of principle for me. So once I heard, and it resonates with me so much that a coach, he as a coach, never gives you solution. Okay, so he says that my best practices cannot be practicable to you, and I completely agree with this kind of belief. But at the same time, we as a human being have some kind of experience, and we have seen and gone through situations where certain method or certain solution worked very well for us. So how, as effective coaches and mentors, we can keep away from the temptation of giving the talent, the coachee, the solution? Because once I give it solution with the best of my intents, it may create some kind of biasness within that coachee. So what is the best way to deal with this situation?
That's a
That's the
great question, Satya. Yeah. And each time I'm tempted to give a solution, I remind myself of the times I was 15 years old, or myself that I had a 15 years old at home, and try to give advices to a 15 years old based on all the wonderful experience you had and see how they react. So, and why is that so? Well, obviously there is the quality of the idea you might share, but there is the acceptance that the other person will have for it or not. And that's often what's in the way, Satya. So there is all the experience you have as a coach, and I'm not saying I'm never sharing my experience with the coach, but it's often the last part of the coaching session. If I feel the person is stuck, if I feel that there is something I can contribute to, I will ask and say, look, Satya, is that okay if I share an idea with you? And that's really at the end of the process. I never go there first. And there are a few reasons for that. First, we often tell leaders, please don't give the solution. And they struggle with that because the leader has been promoted to be a leader. Why? Because they have often the most experience, technical experience, life experience. So if you come to me, I give you the solution. But look, if I give you a solution, Satya, and it works, you keep coming back to me. That's not what I want. I want you to have the capability to find your own answer because I need to protect my time. I want to build in yourself the capability to find the answer. So if you can coming back to me, that's not helpful. If I give you a solution and it doesn't work, you are not happy about me. That's not helpful either. So one way or the other, with me sharing a solution with you, it's not helping me to achieve what ultimately I want. Yes, I might help you in the short term to find a good solution, but long term, it's not the right investment. And that's where slowing down to enable you to find the space to find a solution is so important. Now, your question, I think, is more directed towards, so how do I manage that? I have tons of ideas. How do I stop myself from sharing those? And that's where I would say the reflection and the question, so the two parts of the model, is where I spend most of the time at the start of the discussion. I go very little in advocating. I remember questions, reflection, advocate. Advocate for me is really at the end of the discussion. As long as you are in reflection and questioning, you are not sharing your idea. Now, obviously, it shouldn't be a leading question. A leading question, hey, Satya, by the way, have you thought about doing XYZ? That's not questioning. That's a leading question. I'm hiding an advice in my question. But otherwise, as long as I'm in the reflection and the questioning, I'm really there for you. Coaching is all about the coachee. Coaching is nothing about the coach. Coaching is all about the coachee. I'm here for you. I'm listening 100%. I'm open, present, and connected with you for the whole time. You are my only focus. And so what I know, what I've been through is in that case less relevant. And that's why keeping the advocation for the end of the discussion is the good way to hold yourself from sharing those ideas.
That's a great one. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think your point.
You know, there is. Oh, sorry, Aditya, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
So quickly, there is a famous, and we need to find the name again. I know a great coach in the UK who said that often when we advocate, we are murderers. We are murderers of thoughts that people are having. And the question she's asking, she said, how do you know that what you are going to say is more valuable than the thought that your coach is going to have? How do you know what you are going to say is more valuable than the thought the coaching is going to have? And so often we want to give those thoughts right away. Oh, I've been through that 10 times. Let me explain you how to do it. And often it's not the right solution because I'm not you. I'm not you with all your richness, your experience, your motivation, your emotion, your life path. I'm not you. So most likely my direct solution will not work from you. So yeah, Aditya, sorry, back to you.
No. I was just saying that it's so important, and coaching is all about making the coachee independent, and by using the advocacy skill, we are kind of acting against our own objective basically. So you put it very well, Silva. Thank you very much.
That's right, Aditya. There is one value at time of advocacy, and for the one who are interested in the concept of innovation, you know how ideas get built. Often you get a great idea because you build on somebody else's idea. And you've seen that certainly. Often coach our facilitator. CH, I know you're an outstanding facilitator. We did lots of sessions together. And when you do brainstorming, you do what? You go for quantity of idea. You don't go for quality first. So you want tons of idea, lots of idea, crazy idea. Why? Because a crazy idea will be the spark that you need to get to another one that we wouldn't have thought about if that crazy idea was not said. So the idea of building on each other, associating idea to get new thinking, that's what makes us more effective at creating idea than any machine those days. Artificial intelligence is not as good as we are. We do those things naturally. And so a time for me to advocate in a discussion, Satya, it's not about my idea, but maybe I'm going to spark something in you and you are going to take it and make it work for you. So that can have value. But as Aditya said, more rather toward the end because before I'm doing capability building.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Any more questions? Okay. Before we go to the next question, I would briefly like to share about our next week's guest on Coach's Corner. Please give me a moment to share my screen. I hope you're able to see this. Yeah. So next week we have Arul Dev. He's the CEO of People First Consultants for the last 26 years, and he's pretty active on LinkedIn. And one of the things that he is known for on LinkedIn is to give away books. I often see posts from him saying that I have these books that I'm either not reading or I want to give away. So whoever wants to put their hand up, and he would courier the book across to that individual, free of cost. He doesn't charge a penny. So that's a great thing about him. So he's a giver of knowledge. He's a coach, an author, and an entrepreneur. He's the author of. He's written a couple of books. One Into Great Depth of Your Being, and The Flame Within. So he's also a guest faculty at the Indian Institute of Technology in Madras around self-awareness courses. So we have him here the same time next week, hoping to see most of you for that session. Thank you. All right, back to our session with Sylvain. Any other questions from the audience, or I have a few questions I can ask. All right. So I'll take this opportunity then. So Silva, in one of the roles that you have done, you worked on a model that would relook at the way people would work and collaborate. Can you talk a bit more about it, and if there are any insights that you have, if you can share them with us, which we can all benefit from.
Yes, Aditya. So you are referring to my last role when I was with Allianz, the insurance company based here in Munich, where I was asked by the board, and that was last March, not last March, but March 2020. So really, if you remember the start of the pandemic, at least here on the side of the world, we were sent home overnight, really creating a big logistical challenge at the time. Everybody had to go in remote working. And the company asked me to look into what were the positive impact of the crisis on the company. And I found that an exciting mandate because at the time, nothing was positive about the pandemic. And I mean, those days, it's still, and I acknowledge the situation you had in India recently, which was extremely difficult, was in Italy last year, in other places. And so nothing was positive. And here I was asked to look at the positive impact, which I thought, really cool. So I brought together a cross-functional team of people from finance, from operation, from IT, from HR to look at that. And we talked with all the CEOs within the group and asked them that very question. What have you seen positive so far in the crisis? And we found lots of things came out, reduction of travel and people's, well, CO2 reduction, cost reduction, people having some more time with their family, for example. We saw the deployment of technology accelerating. You heard the quote from Satya Nadella, the CEO from Microsoft, who said, we had 2 years of technological progress in 2 months. I think now we have 12 years in 12 months because you see so many tools being deployed right now. And so, yeah, that's the project I worked for, Aditya, and I'm still consulting now company on building their own model. I don't think there is one model of collaboration that works for everybody. Future of work is very contextual. It depends on your industry, it depends on your culture, on your strategy, on many things, but I'm helping company to find the model that fits for themselves. And you see in some parts of the world, people going back into the office now. And so they are discussing, okay, what do we do? Do we give our employee more flexibility, less? How do we do that? And in essence, you see about five models emerging right now. There is the model where people go back to exactly where they were before the crisis. Nothing has changed. And for me, that's the biggest missed opportunity, because as usual, a crisis brings a momentum. For example, here you have people that have been working home for the first time in their life, and people realize it's working well. So there is something we could leverage, maybe not only home. That's what I think people are starting to struggle with. They are craving for personal interaction, but some flexibility could be good for the company and the employee. So that's the first one, nothing changed as is. The second one you see coming is a little bit what people call the clubhouse model, like the app Clubhouse. So people going into the office whenever they want, going back home whenever they want. You come in, you leave, depending on what's going on. Very, very flexible. It's an interesting model, but that's putting quite pressure, I think, on leaders and employees alike. Hybrid model works very well. CH and I, we did it for 20 years at GE. It worked very well, but there are certain rules, certain practices that you need to respect, because there is not only the company and the employee, there is the team. And the team is a super important unit of performance, unit of social interaction, of identity. And so you need to define rules that work for the team. But that's number two. Number three, it's more activity-based. So people typically going back in the office, but moving in different space in the office depending on what they are doing. Meeting room, coffee shop, in a room alone somewhere, in a phone booth or whatever. And you see lots of discussion around redesigning the office those days. Then you have the number four, which is typically more hybrid. So you say, and some company have said you can work remotely as long as you want now. Again, might work for certain industry, but people, I think, will miss over time the social interaction. And I think most of you realize that right now. And then the last of the five is the so-called hub and spoke. So imagine in big city, and I know you have big city in your country, takes a long time to commute to the center to go to the office, and maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So if I have the choice between being home and the office, home I'm a bit alone. In the office, alone, I mean in terms of work interaction. In the office, it's a long way. So some company are thinking about creating a third space, which is a space in between where you will be going, it's a SPOC, and you will be meeting with other company. And so creating cross-company innovation. We have some of them in Munich where you have 3 or 4 big company sharing space together. The only downside of that model is that now you are mixing people based on where they live and not the type of job they do. And I think innovation comes more from the type of task you do. So briefly, Aditya, I think there are lots of models out there. It's emerging. People are looking into it. I help them look into it. I think it will need a lot of prototyping and seeing how it works. And I think as well, there will be different models for different company and different model based on what kind of talent you want to attract. So yeah, might become part of your strategy, what kind of model you want to have.
Great. Thanks. Any questions?
Sylvain, this is Amit here. There's one question, you just mentioned about people having, different companies having different models during this pandemic and a clubhouse and all of that. But what about new employees? chaps who just got onboarded, maybe fresh engineers or fresh MBAs or whatever, who just been onboarded, and companies are doing it remotely. And the first 3 months or the first 6 months, extremely important, to kind of create a bonding with the employee, with their peers, with their superiors, with the managers, etc. So how do you really get around that kind of a situation?
That's a great one. I mean, it's interesting because when we went into the remote working, lots of people thought that's a model that specifically the younger workforce will enjoy, thinking they're all digital and that will be easy for them. And we realized it was the biggest stress on them, on the younger workforce, because often they are the one that socialize through work. And often they are the one that needs to learn from the most experienced. Exactly as you said, the apprentice is the one that needs to be exposed to somebody and build the skills. And so I think the onboarding, Amit, has been lots of companies develop innovative solution, and you have a buddy and you have some regular touch point. And I mean, there are lots of things you can do. But I think now we are entering the re-onboarding phase. And if you like, there is an interesting article on that in HBR, in the Harvard Business Review right now, called Re-onboarding Your New Employee, which is exactly about the process of, again, now that we can come back, at least in some place of the world, how do you design that to really catch up on all the things those people have missed? And I think there are limitations to a fully remote model. I think that lots of people are struggling right now with the idea of an hybrid world because they are tired to work from home. But my argumentation is you have not been working from home right now. You have been working from home in an emergency state. And that's different from the normal working from home. So I do believe there is lots of value, but only working from home, and at least from your example here, will not work. There is that balance you need. The office is creating a sense of identity with the company. If you work only from home, I think you become very transactional, and it will be easier for you to change company, and that's not in the interest of the company. What about innovation? I'm not bumping into you over lunch and connecting your thoughts of a discussion I had with Aditya when I arrived in the office and creating new ideas. What about productivity? Yes, people are working even more those days, but yeah, there is a question of intensity of work. So there are lots of aspects that I think have limitation in a remote only world. And the one you mentioned about learning from others, being exposed to them, asking questions, is still limited to be done remotely.
Thank you, Sylvain.
I know the time is running. Can I ask one question I have for Sylvain? Sylvain, in the book, Master Coach Jeff Thompson, Greg Thompson actually says something very interesting. When each of us as individuals, as coaches, we may have some unfinished agenda in our life. And when a talent comes and starts having a conversation, they are asking something that I was unable to fulfill for myself. Right? So my question is, how do you, am I audible?
Yes, sometimes I hear some voice behind CH. I don't know why.
Okay. So the question is, how do you ensure your limiting beliefs do not interfere with the aspirations of your talent?
Thank you, CH. That's the $1 million question. First, let me put in the chat the link for Amit. That's the article I was referring to in case you are interested. So CH, you say, how do you ensure your limiting beliefs are not in the way of helping your clients? Yeah, great question. So the first thing I would say is a great coach is somebody who is being coached himself or herself. If you try to be a coach, but you are never coached, I think there is something a bit difficult in the process. So great coach have their coach and they get coached all the time. And there is not an end to that because it helps you to reflect. It helps you to slow down. It helps you to have somebody that helps you get perspective and find a solution you hadn't thought about, etc. So first, make sure you have a coach because to your point, CH, we are never done. It's not because we are a coach that we have more wisdom, we are smarter. No, we have different skill and we give certain perspective to the client. So I think that's one that's super important. Being coached. The other one, and I know you are a living example of that, CH, but keep learning all the time. I'm reading all the time a book on a topic, and not only on coaching, because I think otherwise you miss the context of your leader. So I just read one on artificial intelligence, then I go back to coaching, then I read one on learning, then I read one on strategy. And I think with that, I'm trying to remain at least curious enough that I understand what people are going through. And then the other one I would say, but it's more shortened solution, it's the discussion we had about advocating and questioning. When I advocate and, questioning and reflecting, when I do that, I let you be who you are, and I'm not coming with my own limitation. But I think it's a journey in itself, CH. It's, is there an ultimate moment when I know I'm good enough to do it? No. But by the way, that's super liberating. There are lots of people that holding themselves to coach because they say, I'm not there yet. I don't know when you are there. I don't know who can say I'm already here. So go ahead and coach. You are going to learn a ton, and you will never be perfect to be the perfect coach, but that's okay.
Thanks.
Any more questions? So, Sylvain, as a follow-up to what you were responding to Amit about the changing scenarios and the work culture and people's expectations and the way we are dealing with things. Have you seen any challenging situations where leaders were struggling to accommodate this, and as a coach, how did you work through that, or how are you working through it?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I mean, the biggest challenge we are facing is a cultural challenge right now. So when people were sent home at the start of the pandemic, it was a logistical challenge. You had to deploy technology to enable people working from home within 48 hours. Now that we slowly can go back to the office, or will do so soon, it's not a logistical, it's a cultural, a psychological challenge. What kind of model do we want to create? How does it fit to our value? That's a choice. It's not forced anymore. It's a choice. And that becomes very challenging. And often it's the leader and the culture that's in the middle here. I remember speaking with a CEO that said, Sylvain, remote working is not about technology, it's about mindset. And that's very true. And that's the mindset of the employee and the mindset of the leader. And often leaders say, look, I don't believe in remote working. And why do they say so? Because they feel they're losing control of their employee. Okay, so now you are home, now you will be doing your laundry, booking your holiday, or watching Netflix instead of working. The reality, and I'm sure you experienced that yourself, people are working even more than before. And so there is a ton here around control, around trust, but as well around how you manage people. In the past, you might have managed people based on presence. So I see you in the office. By the way, I see you, so what? Are you working more than home? I'm not sure. There are people in the office that are not per se working more than home. So there is a lot of trust we need to have here. And maybe we start something we've been saying for a long time that you hear as well in agile way of working. We start having leader measuring people on outcome instead of being around or not being around. And you have method to do that, where you measure outcome. You think of OKR, objective key results, for example. That's a classic method. So I'm going to measure you on your outcome and what you deliver. And that can be location and time agnostic. I don't mind where you are, what time you do it. I'm measuring you on the outcome. Now, obviously, again, back to the question of Amit, there is a need for being with each other for all of that. So I'm not reducing that to I'm sitting on the Bahamas the whole year and just producing stuff. That's not the extreme. But I think that's in the way to your question, Aditya, the leadership style. And it's not a critique. Most leaders have grown up in an analog way. And when we went remote, we did a lift and shift. So we took an analog workplace with analog leader and analog tools, boom, we put them remotely. And then we realized it's not working. So yes, indeed, we have to help leaders around that. We have to coach them. We have to bring them tools. We have to make them reflect on their practice. We have to do all that process. I think the future of work is something we need to shape. And for us as coaches, it's wonderful because there is a cultural acceleration towards what we always wanted to have: empowered employee, trusting leader, empathetic leader. I think the future of work is bright, and we will help to design that as coaches.
Great, great. It's fantastic. We're at the top of the hour. If you're okay, Silva, we can probably take one question if anybody in the audience has, or we can call it the day. Anybody has any questions? I guess I think that's. I don't see any other questions coming through, Silva. So really appreciate this conversation. Wonderful takeaways. I've been writing down as you were talking all through. Tons of takeaways that I have personally. I really loved this conversation. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Aditya, and yeah, I want to commend you on doing the podcast, because as we were discussing with CH, our own limitation and how we keep learning, and podcast is a wonderful a tool, podcast, webcast, and you are all here because you want to learn and share, and I'm sure you learn a ton from each other. So congratulations for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Silva, once again.
Thank you.
Thanks,